Hello and welcome to Insiders, a podcast all about the world of television with me, Jimmy Mulville.
And me, Peter Fincham.
This is the podcast for people who love TV and want to know a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes in show business.
So lots to talk about this week.
Yes.
Jimmy, you're back from New York. How's American Have I Got News for You going? Have you? Well, obviously you are here. You haven't been locked in jail for satirising the regime in America.
Yeah, it's very interesting, America. I got through immigration. They didn't incarcerate me. But genuinely, the team that I work with over there are brilliant. We covered the two main stories were Robert Kennedy's congressional hearing.
Yes,
with
his strange breathing.
It was. That's how he breathes on the microphone.
Weird, isn't
and he's
it?
the health secretary.
Yes,
and he was absolutely creamed by both Democrats and Republicans. Many Republicans were giving him a very hard time at this hearing, and
because he kind of operates on prejudice, on fact-free prejudice about vaccines and things.
He's not bothered by facts,
Yes.
And he's not bothered by science, and he's fired the head of the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control over in America, because she's a fan of vaccines. And when he was challenged on this, saying, did you get rid of her because she's a fan of vaccines? He said, no, I asked her to resign because when I asked her whether she was a trustworthy person or not, she said no. I thought, well, how can you, if she says she's not trustworthy, how can you believe her? Maybe she is trustworthy. Anyway, it was a really good show. It's got off to a good start, and I've come back, and I'm slightly jet lagged, so I might drop off whilst you're speaking. But lots of bits and pieces have been happening this week.
There's been the Murdoch succession, which has been in the news. The news that finally Lachlan Murdoch takes over the empire. I was going to say the evil empire. You can't say that. The empire and
which is evil.
Well, but his siblings, James and Elizabeth and Prudence, they won't be involved anymore. They're out of it. They're no longer in the kind of Murdoch empire, but they've each been compensated to the tune of $1.1 billion. Billion?
With a burr.
With a burr. Exactly.
That's the best
but
kind
dollars with a duh, which isn't quite as good as pounds with a per, to be fair.
Well, we should have a whip round for them. Poor souls. So it was a matter of conscience then. They thought that Lachlan was the best person to give them $1.1 billion.
Exactly. Because he apparently shares the political views.
What a shower of people they are.
He apparently shares. I'm friends of a couple of them. They're very nice people.
Of course you are.
I don't want to say
you move in those kind of circles, Peter.
But they apparently Lachlan being in charge means that the kind of political mission is intact because he's kind of leans to the right.
That's a shame.
And most closely echoes his dad's.
So Fox News will stay as
Fox News is not suddenly going to turn into CNN. They will not be commissioning Have I Got News for You US.
Because I had a fantasy that James Murdoch would take over and start doing programs about vegan cooking and things like that.
Yes, because he's gone a bit that way.
So we don't need to worry about the Murdoch siblings' retirement plan then.
But look, let's another story that's worth talking about, which is about this world of, if you like, new media, non-traditional television now kind of finding its way back into traditional television, is that Piers Morgan, a friend of Donald Trump, has to be said, Piers Morgan's Uncensored, which has been on YouTube and it has more than 4 million subscribers, big success on YouTube, has now been picked up by Channel 5 and is going to play on a Friday night at 11 o'clock.
Well, the best of.
A sort of 90-minute highlight show Friday night, which is a sort of traditional night for comedy and satire and so on. Have I Got News for You night, Friday night. And is going to play on 5. So this is an interesting kind of trend in which we have talked about a little bit before.
We've talked about this a lot, actually.
What is the difference between, if you like, traditional television with proper production values and all that kind of stuff and stuff on YouTube?
Yeah.
And eventually do the two merge into one. And, as we've talked about, YouTube is basically essentially a platform. You can put anything on it. But what you put on YouTube can also exist on a old-fashioned linear channel.
Well, Ben Frau again, I think, has pulled off a bit of a coup here because Piers Morgan, as you say, clearly has 4 million subscribers on YouTube.
Which is bigger than even a big Channel 5 audience.
Exactly. So even if half of those people, even if a quarter of those people come to him at 11 o'clock at night to see a kind of boil down of it, a kind of best of the week, I think it's a very good plan. I think, and also it's just basically him talking. You don't need big production values. I mean, that show on YouTube, if you did it for television, wouldn't look that different.
Yes.
So it's not as though he's doing a drama or a sketch where you need props and you need a set. It's basically Piers and his opinions.
But we have seen in recent years Channel 5 trying to kind of, if you like, make their image more respectable, more middle class, more, they've moved into drama, they've got away from Big Brother, they've got a very clear mission there. Is this in the same direction as that? Or does this feel like something that Richard Desmond might have done when he owned Channel 5?
Well, I think you could argue that Piers, I actually, I don't agree with a lot what he says, but when he was on the breakfast show on ITV, he was a presence. And sometimes he would give conservative politicians, and when they're in government, he would give them a really rough ride.
Yes.
So he's kind of bold, and he's let's face it, he's very noisy, and he's controversial. So I think he'll make some news, not just report upon it. So I think it sits in that thing of being populist, which I know what you're saying is, are they playing to the lowest common denominator? But I think you could describe it as being journalistic.
Yeah, and
he's a journalist.
Yeah, because on the table, I brought Piers into ITV, and even then there were some people who kind of raised eyebrows. They thought of him as a kind of disgraced former tabloid editor or whatever. Yeah. But actually, he was very good television. He was very good doing his life stories. He was very good on the breakfast show. He's very good doing documentaries. He's always send Piers off to some high security prison in America.
We made one for you.
Did you make those?
Well, Plum Pictures is a company.
Oh yeah, Plum Pictures, and then he did it very well.
It's Piers Morgan and Killer Women.
Yeah.
And I said to the producer Stuart Cabb, in the final episodes, if you can get one of the women to kill him, it'd be great television.
Well, to be fair, Piers himself understood this. He would say, "Why don't we do a series called Piers Morgan in Prison? Because it's what people want to see." And so
he knows himself.
He knows himself.
Yeah.
And I suppose you could argue, and probably this explains Channel 5's decision to do this, that if you're I don't want to say a fan of Piers Morgan, if you're a person who thinks Piers Morgan is worth watching because he's very good television, whether you agree with his views or not and his world outlook, then you haven't seen a lot of him lately if you're not somebody who goes to YouTube. So I don't think the 4 million YouTube subscribers will come to watch it on Channel 5. I guess what Channel 5 are looking for are people who aren't watching it on YouTube but think, well, actually, I quite like Piers Morgan.
Clearly, Piers Morgan's own company, in association with Talk TV, has made this show for YouTube, and now they've sold it to Channel 5. I wonder how much they're getting for it.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, I'm guessing not very much, because I think the reach is good for Piers. He'll want to do it, and I don't think Channel 5 are ever going to be in a position to spend a lot of money till 11 o'clock on a Friday night. So I'm guessing this is more, we've got a platform, you want to reach some people who don't subscribe to you on YouTube. It's a kind of mutual interest to put it on Channel 5, but I don't. I mean, Piers, 4 million subscribers on YouTube. That's how he's going to.
He won't be getting
money.
1.1 billion, will he? Like the Murdoch kids.
I don't think so.
Can I have our first envelope, Peter?
Let's get the first envelope.
Owen, you all right? Oh, you look sober this week. It's good. Right, the first envelope is the BBC and government select committees we've known and loved.
That's a real come on of a title, isn't it? That's the sort of thing.
It's hardly a cryptic crossword.
You hung that outside a West End theatre, you'd sell every seat out.
Yeah.
So this week, Tim Davie and Samir Shah have been giving evidence.
Samir Shah's the new chairman.
Samir Shah's the chair
of the Board of Trustees.
Tim Davie's been Director General now for, 6-7 years, quite a long time now. He's still there. That's an achievement in itself. They were giving evidence to the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee. Now, did you see this, Jim?
I did, and it's strange. I did one of these about a year ago. I got involved with a brilliant Iranian filmmaker called Mohsen Makhmalbaf, and we became friends. And we got involved in a campaign to try and get a very small number of filmmakers and writers and artists out of Afghanistan because they're on a hit list, the Taliban hit list. And when they find one of these poor people who are now living in hiding, they kill them. So we've been involved in trying to get this campaign, and we've brilliantly got a government select committee hearing with the DCMS, Carolyn Dinage, who is the chair, and she's a wonderful person, Tory MP. And
so you went along and did one of these.
I did a government select committee last November.
What did you wear?
So I wore a flowing ball gown. What did I wear, Peter?
No, I want to mean is, did you
trousers and shirts?
Yeah, I know, but did you put on a tie and a suit,
No.
and sort of, as if you were going to the headmaster's study, or did you turn out like a kind of media, casually dressed media guy, blown out off the street?
Well, my stylist and I got together.
Don't tell me you didn't sit down before going to this thing and think, I wonder what I should wear.
All right, this is oversharing. Okay, so. Since I was a child...
You've had a stylist?
No, since I was a child, I've got my clothes ready the night before. And my children mock me for it. But if you're brought up in a home in Liverpool where the parents are rowing all the time, you want to get out the house as quickly as possible in the morning. So I would put my clothes on very quickly, grab some tea and toast, and fuck off to school. So I got my clothes ready. If people are interested in this...
Well, I am. I've asked the question.
I wore a jacket. I wore a very tasteful pair of trousers on my legs. And a shirt without a tie. I thought I'd go crazy and not wear a tie. Anyway, the point is, Peter, is that what I'm trying to say to you is that the PR company briefed me.
Right.
And they briefed people before you go on. And they said, look, you're in for an easy ride because there are two kinds of witness to a government select committee hearing. There's the one where they grill you.
Yes.
And one where you're called the hero.
Well, and it's obvious to see why you might be the hero in this one.
You're going in and you're giving them information, and then Caroline brilliantly wrote a letter to the Home Secretary and to the Foreign Office saying, you should pay attention to this issue. It's a very prescient issue. It's a humanitarian issue. And we're still trying to get there. Trying to get through the bureaucracy is very difficult. But the other side is, they said, if you're on the other side, if you're being grilled, then it's a tough gig. And the first question that Caroline Dinage asked Tim Davie is, do you think you should still be the Director General?
Yeah, which actually, I hate to say it, is quite an easy one because that is, if you like, the ball, you're going to play with a straight bat.
Yeah.
I mean, I've nearly was in this position once myself, and this was an incident at ITV. So Philip Schofield, by my memory,
Steady on,
was on This Morning programme talking to the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
And he had a list, which he was sort of holding like this, of names of people who he, were rumoured to have been involved in sex scandals.
Right.
And at one point, he held the list to the wrong angle to the camera. It's live television.
Right.
And if you froze the picture at that point and zoomed in, you could see the names on the list. But this turned into a scandal because, by simply having the names on the list, he was besmirching them and he was libeling them and so on and so forth. And there was a lot of pressure on Philip Schofield. I had to have a one-to-one meeting with Philip Schofield saying, you mustn't do this again, Philip. One more strike and you're out, that kind of stuff. All a bit embarrassing or whatever. David Cameron.
How did Philip take it? Does he like feedback?
No, he was. No, listen, I don't want to go down that road.
Okay.
He was fine with it. He totally understood that he had to come to the headmaster's study. I was the headmaster.
I hear what you say.
We were going through the motions of something that we both knew we need to do. Let's put it that way. But what I do remember about it is that I think he was called John Whittingdale. Do you remember John Whittingdale?
Yes.
He was something like the chair of the media committee or something.
He's a piece of work.
I can't possibly comment on that.
I can.
He wanted my head on a spike outside ITV Towers, and he was saying not to me directly, but I think to the press department at ITV, if Peter Fincham doesn't appear on camera apologising for this, then I will call him up in front of a select committee. Because they had the power to do that, and they would grill me in the way talking about it. So what the compromise that was negotiated, and this is kind of reflection on the way the world sort of works, if you like, is that when I was leaving ITV one evening, one of the ITV news correspondents, a woman called Lucy Manning, who I knew quite well and liked very much, would be waiting for me to doorstep me as I walked from the front door of ITV into the car park to drive home. And so what turned up on the news at 10 looked entirely spontaneous, which is I'm sort of, buttoning up my coat and walking out the front door, and then Lucy Manning suddenly sticking a microphone in my face and saying, "Mr. Fincham, what have you got to say about Philip Schofield and his notorious list that's all over the newspaper?" And obviously, and then I knew what I was going to say, and I dealt with that, and then it was done and dusted. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a strange thing, that what is now put on the news is fundamentally fake. But this is the ITV news, which I'm responsible for, because it wasn't a real doorstepping, it was a pre-arranged doorstepping.
Do you have makeup and stuff?
No. I thought it best if I looked a little bit spontaneous. Exactly. And it was simply a way of keeping John Whittingdale from calling me in front of a Friends committee. Yeah, which I never had to do.
No, he was a bit of a bruiser. He was very anti-BBC, I remember. But this select committee, Tim and Davie then went into a whole defence of, what the BBC do, and he invoked this idea that it's a very precious thing in our culture. It's an impartial news.
But we agree, which I agree with.
And I think that's all.
Tim, good on you. Keep saying that.
You just think that the BBC is on the back foot a bit. I mean, it's being, from all sides, really. And as it goes into its negotiation with the DCMS, with the government for its charter renewal, I think everybody needs to get behind it.
Well, Tim came up with the plan that I found myself thinking about. Is this just a bit of red meat that you're throwing to the MPs, or is there anything real in it? And I mean, he said it with great sincerity. He said they're going to come up with a list, if you like, of shadow presenters, that they've got a succession plan. Any presenter who suddenly is caught up in a sex scandal.
How does that work?
Well, it's kind of like the substitutes bench at a football match. In other words, these presumably presenters with their tracksuits still on, waiting to suddenly come in and take over Strictly Come Dancing at a moment's notice.
So if Claudia...
Yeah, Claudia Winkleman turns out to have been involved in a sex scandal. I'm sure she never will be. Not suggesting that for a minute. Suddenly, Cat Deeley unzips her tracksuit and comes sprinting onto the set of...
So you cast Cat Deeley, would you?
No, I'm not particularly casting Cat Deeley or anybody. I'm only... I totally understand why Tim Davie came up with
Hello,
this.
Davina, I think.
Hello, Davina. Hello, who knows?
So you think that?
If you think about it, it's a bit of nonsense, because they're not going to be under contract. If you're a football manager and it's halfway through the second half and you need to bring a substitute on, not normally because of a sex scandal, because you're 2-0 down. No. All those guys sitting on the substitute bench, they are on your payroll. You can tell them to go on.
I was going to say, if
it's just names, it's just a wish list.
So, but the thing is, you've got to have people then. Yes, you've got to have people on a kind of quasi contract to be.
That's an interesting use of licence payers' money, isn't it?
You might be called upon.
Yes.
If we find out that Fiona Bruce is leading a double life and we need to get rid of her off the Antiques Roadshow. I mean, that's bizarre, isn't it? Although I have to say, the only interview I ever did for a job was at the BBC Radio in 1980, where the then head of the department, no, I don't think he was head of it, and the guy who was running the BBC interview, he said to me, "You're producing a comedy with Ronnie Barker," who for younger viewers was a very big comedy star in those days, and he dies half an hour before the show. What do you do? I said, well, I think I'd ring his wife. I'd call an ambulance. She said, no. Who would you replace him with? So clearly...
You need to find a third person called Ronnie on the basis that the show has been billed. Yeah, Ronnie O'Sullivan or something. It's been billed as the two Ronnies.
I ring up Ronnie Biggs.
The Trade Descriptions Act means it must go ahead with two people called Ronnie.
It's, I think it is I wonder why they came up with that strategy.
Well, look,
to reassure people.
I go back to the difference between reality and politics, that that ultimately I can see, I can imagine the meeting before with Tim and his, senior people on the press side and the strategy politics side, people who stroke their chins and are very, very good at this stuff say, we need to say we're prepared for the next Greg Wallace, if you like. So rather than the Greg Wallace thing happens, Greg Wallace is out, then the other guy's out, then a month passes and we say, here are the two new presenters of MasterChef. We say, aha, we were prepared for this. You open the door and out stepped Davina McCall.
Here's one we did earlier.
Here's one we did earlier. But in reality, because it would be absurd to make that contractual, you're hardly going to pay whoever. You're not going to pay Davina to be on standby. It slightly reminds me, do you remember On the Hour, the brilliant series that became The Day Today, the radio series produced by Armando Iannucci? And one of the comic ideas in On the Hour was was Radio 4's 24-hour standby drama, whereby if at any point Radio 4 fell off air for some reason because some correspondent in Sunderland unplugged his microphone or whatever, they just cut to the 24-hour standby drama, which was basically a drama just going all the time.
What caught my eye this week was the BBC. Now, you probably know more about this than I do. So I'm going to ask you a question because I don't really understand it. Is they've announced that they're going to stop this premium call rate thing where you call into a show and make your vote and you're charged money for it and the broadcaster makes money. How does that work?
Well, I've got a lot of experience of this. So good is my first reaction because it's a bit of a scam. It always was a bit of a scam. It made a lot of money at its peak. Well, my memory of it is from shows like The X Factor when they were at their peak. So I better be careful when I say scam because I'll get sued. But let's put it.
You can say con.
Let's put it in a slightly different way.
Scandal.
It was an unexpected and wholly welcome contribution to the bottom line of both production companies and broadcasters at the expense of viewers who, at the point when they were compelled to pick up their phone to ring and vote for Gareth Gates, didn't realise this was the most expensive phone call they'd make all week. I think I'm right in saying it didn't even need to be a premium rate phone call. In other words, they could have flicked a switch and made it a normal rate phone, but they started seeing the money that was coming in of it. And you got to remember, at the height of the X Factor, more people voted in the X Factor final than in the general election that year, or if not more, nearly as many. That became a public thing. So this became a lovely windfall of revenue, which got split between broadcasters, as I say, production companies, and whoever the interested parties were. But basically gravy, basically unearned money that was basically because people were so keen to vote that they would pick up their phone, and of course people's kids would pick up their phone, because they were the most obsessed and they would want to vote for Gareth Gates 10 times over, and parents would get the phone bill. Then what happened, which is why I think this announcement is welcome, but boy, it's taken a long time, is that online voting started to become the normal way. No money in it at all.
Right.
No money in it at all.
So they cancel it because it's not making him much money.
No. You can't resist the
purpose.
tide of online because it's better. You just got an app. You don't even need to pick up your phone. You don't even have a phone. You just get on your phone. And I'm talking about well over 10 years ago when online voting started to replace premium rate phone-ins. I'm guessing the defence of it would be, we've continued with it because the older viewers still like picking up their phone. And they don't like doing things online. And I suppose, therefore, for things like Strictly Come Dancing, Sports Personality of the Year, Eurovision, they're kind of thinking, well, this is a service to older viewers.
What, we'll just rip off the old people?
Well, no, I need to be careful what we need to be careful what we say here, because I've got a lot of memory of it from ITV, which is a commercial company. ITV, I think, as a company, had no embarrassment about taking that money from viewers.
You mean?
So I'm going to stick with embarrassment. I think the BBC, I mean, anyway, even if they made a lot of money out of it, they say, oh, we ploughed it back into programme making,
Of course,
and all
yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So they'll have had all those arguments.
Croissants all around for breakfast, I think, the BBC at that point.
Exactly.
But still with a kind of BBC theme, I suppose, is that the big news this week, of course, in terms of talent, was that Ruth Jones and James Corden
Yes.
are taking the Apple shilling, and basically their next show will not be on the BBC.
Yeah.
It'll be on Apple. What do you make of that?
Well, look, we're back in the same, world that we were talking about in relation to the Edinburgh Festival, and the head of news at Channel 4, if I'm right, who described Netflix, I think, as TV tourists.
Yes, that's right.
So you could say Apple Plus are being TV tourists
Yeah.
here, or you can look at it another way and say, get real. This is the world we live in. Gavin and Stacey. I mean, I find that whole Gavin and Stacey story fascinating because it wasn't that huge in its original.
It was on BBC
incarnation.
Three.
Yeah, and it was popular, but it doesn't sit up there among the highest rating sitcoms at all. Then it came back for that Christmas special, and you could say, but I'm sure this isn't the case, that Christmas special was almost a way of advertising its wares to Apple Plus, saying, if you give us many millions, we'll do a follow-up to it, and we'll do it for you, and the BBC won't get a piece of it at all. Oh, what do you think?
What do you think? It's that calculated? I'm not.
No, I doubt if it is. I doubt if it is because I don't think anybody knew that Christmas special was going to be so huge.
I mean, Gavin Stacey was much loved, wasn't it? It won a BAFTA, and people look forward to it coming back. And it was about a family, and the cast are brilliant, of course.
And James Corden then became very famous in America.
He is, yeah.
Surely a key part of this.
Yeah, and he is a big talent, and so is she. And they've come up with an idea called The Choir. And it's about an estranged brother and sister team who he's forced to come back to a town he doesn't want to come back to. So it's got that kind of, it's going to be tugging at your heartstrings. You know, one argument, if you see it from one point of view, it's the BBC have lost two key pieces of talent. But, in the real world, it makes sense for Apple to say, well, why do you do the show with us? You suddenly have a global audience. We will pay you more money. There's no question. Apparently, it's a 7-figure deal.
Yeah, and there is risk. There's risk
it's not billions, but it's millions.
No, but there's risk for James Corden and Ruth Jones and for Apple. We were talking last week, I think it was, about the tricky journey from the BBC to ITV that so many people from Morecambe Wise onwards have kind of come unstuck. I don't think you can draw an exact parallel with the journey from the BBC to a streamer, but it's easy to throw the money at them. It's not so easy to come up with something as good as Gavin and Stacey. I mean, they're very talented. I would personally, I'd place a $5 on it. I think it would not. But in other words, I think they probably will do something brilliant. But it's also easy to imagine that sort of slightly disappointing thing of thinking, did the magic evaporate as they went from the BBC to Apple?
And I think anything they do after Gavin and Stacey, I think will be compared to Gavin and Stacey. It's this kind of second album problem. And so I think whichever platform they're on, they'll have that. They'll have the judgment of, I can see the reviewers saying, well, it's the law of diminishing returns. It's not as good as Gavin and Stacey. But if you're going to do that, if you're going to take the risk, I think taking the risk on, I think Apple do brilliant shows. I think Apple curate their shows really well. Of all the streamers at the moment, I think Apple are doing the best job.
There's not many duds on Apple.
There aren't many duds, and they're very, very picky. I mean, I pitch shows to Jay Hunt, and she gets back to you very quickly, which I bless her for, because a quick no is my second favourite answer.
Yeah, she gives the quickest no in television.
Yeah. She often says no before I've even pitched her the idea.
I know. That's because I've rung her up before and said, I want to warn you, Jay. Jimmy's got another one of his dodgy ideas.
Hello, Jay, it's Jimmy. No. I put the phone down. That's how good she is. That's how good she is, Peter. But
it's also a sign of the times, isn't it? Because if you go back a generation or so, you can easily think of sitcoms that had a life on the BBC that then just came to an end. I mean, obvious example, Fawlty Towers, 2 series, and then John Cleese stopped. Had Apple TV existed in those days, or any of the other streamers, and said, "John, we would like you to do a third, fourth, and fifth series of this," and he would have said, "No, I think I've done it. I think I think I've said all there is to say," and then they would have slipped a check across the table to him, and he would suddenly have had lots of fresh new ideas. That would be totally imaginable, but it never happened. And funnily enough, he's been in the news, and I read an interview with him only yesterday.
Oh dear!
Well, he really, really puts the boot into the BBC. He basically says there's nobody there who knows what they're talking about. They're idiots. And even in his interview says to the journalist, "And you can print that, and you can print that." I always think something like saying to him, "Have you actually met them, John?" I don't think he's met these people.
John, shut the fuck up. Here's the thing, though. It's a very serious point you make about giving things an extra life, because the streamers do that.
Well, Top Boy would be a good example. Do you remember Top Boy?
Yeah,
brilliant.
But I was talking to a guy who runs Tiger Aspect Comedy, and he was saying that Netflix obviously showed Benidorm. They bought the back catalogue of Benidorm.
Yes.
It became a big hit for them.
Yeah.
So guess what Tiger Aspect are doing now?
They're doing more Benidorm.
They're making new Benidorms.
For Benidorm. For Netflix. Or for ITV.
For Netflix.
So this is the same phenomenon.
So basically...
I don't think that'd be seven
But
figure,
that's a Lazarus thing.
Yeah.
That's a miracle. You raise something from the dead, you give it a new life, and then you do new episodes of it.
Benidorm, I just put in a word for Benidorm because I'm not sure it was a comedy aficionados series that was produced originally by our old friend Jeffrey Perkins.
Yes.
And I think Benidorm was actually really quite brilliant.
Had a great
cast.
cast.
It knew exactly what it was doing.
Yeah.
It had a kind of seaside postcard humour to it, broadly drawn characters, brilliantly played by a great cast, and I 100% could see why you'd revive Benidorm.
But it didn't appeal to the snooty kind of
it wasn't
metropolitan...
No, exactly.
The chatterati.
People like you.
Oh, well, of course.
But I loved it.
I couldn't be seen in the same room as it. No, I thought it was brilliant. I thought, and like you said, it was unashamedly popular.
Popular, but it's a bit more subtle and sophisticated than you think. The only kind of involvement I had with Benidorm, or effect I had on it, was that when I arrived at ITV, it was half hour long, i.e. in an ITV terms, 24 minutes or something. And I said to the makers of it, I think you could do this as an hour long. And they were a bit, I don't know, it might be stretched, blah, blah, blah. But they agreed to do it, and I honestly think it got better.
So what I noticed this week he's not the passing, but he's definitely taking a step back from the presenting of a very popular radio show. I know we're a TV broadcast, but he was a major figure on television as well. Melvyn Bragg has now just resigned from hosting In Our Time, which was one of my favourite shows, where he talks about things from history and he gets the experts in, and it's a really brilliant Radio 4 show. And his final episode was in July, where he and the experts had a discussion on the history of civility, of how to disagree with somebody in a civil way. Now, didn't you used to commission the South Bank show, didn't you? And I think you did something else to the South Bank show.
Well, yes.
When you were a controller of ITV.
Yeah. Why do I come into this? So Melvyn Bragg, brilliant broadcaster, obviously.
This sounds bad. When you start off with a compliment, this can only go one way.
On the question, In Our Time, I did once say to Melvyn, what a fantastic programme to present, because you must learn about so many things. One day it's paleontology or something. One day it's the Ottoman Empire, and whatever. Every week. And he said no, I don't learn anything at all. He said 2 days after it, I can't remember a single thing about the subject.
Did he know who you were?
Well, I wish he'd mistaken me for somebody else. So I thought it was very interesting. He said, to be honest, he goes in one ear and
I can imagine that.
And you can imagine that in a way. And he's, what he would do, it was like a sort of dinner party in Our Time, in which he'd get in a group of people who knew a bit about the Ottoman Empire, and he'd let one talk for 5 minutes, and then he'd cut them off and say to the other one, what have you got to say about the Ottoman Empire?
He used to shout at some of them as well, actually.
Well, he's about to say, he did sometimes sound as if he had a train to catch.
Yeah.
Has to be said. Get on with this. And he was, you needed to be on your mettle talking about the Ottoman Empire in our time, without a shadow of a doubt. Anyway.
Is that the only episode you ever listened to? Because you've now mentioned the Ottoman Empire about 5 times.
All the other ones went in one ear and out the other.
Okay,
it's the
fine.
honest
You're
truth,
just like
they did for Melvyn. But yes, it's true. So Melvyn, was a presenter of the South Bank show.
Yeah.
Which was an
iconic show,
a landmark
on
iconic show on ITV. But it was maybe reaching the end of its days.
It was the only art show on ITV, wasn't it?
Yeah, but we haven't got time to go into this. This is a big issue about the role of the arts on television and to what degree ITV
can be bothered.
ITV is the natural place for a long-running art strand presented by Melvyn. And it is true that, I think it was about 2009, we had the global financial crisis. Budgets were really hard, blah-de-blah. We had to take a bit of an axe to parts of the schedule. And ITV is ultimately a commercial organisation, has to look to into those considerations.
Yes.
So, the job fell to me to say, we're probably going to bring the South Bank show to an end. Now, to Melvyn's credit, he didn't make that easy for me.
So
let's just put it that way.
Paint the picture.
I don't want to paint the picture too vividly. He might be a fan of our podcast.
I doubt it. It'll go in one ear and out the other.
But
that's all right.
Certainly, when you've been on the end of a kind of earwigging from Melvyn about the crass idiocy of the decision you're making, you do remember it. You do remember it. Now, look, to complete this story, Melvyn did a smart thing. He went to see Michael Grade, who was the executive chairman of ITV, and said, I accept Peter Fincham's crass, ill-considered decision, but can I please have the brand and the back catalogue? And Michael puffed on a cigar, metaphorically, and said, of course you can, Melvyn.
And so what happened to it?
He took it to Sky.
He did,
and
didn't he?
It continued for many, many years. So I would also argue that worked out well.
Well, they had a whole channel called Sky Arts.
Exactly.
So it makes sense.
He probably had to make it, the production team probably had to make it for a slightly keener budget, I would guess. But nevertheless, it went on for many years on Sky. And, to get a rounded picture of this, he's a big figure in television arts history and in television history, and a brilliant man and so on. But if you ever become a channel controller and he's got a show on your channel, I wouldn't recommend cancelling it without wearing full body armour.
Didn't he used to write novels?
Yes.
Ever read one?
Didn't Dame Edna once interview him and say, we've all got a bit of catching up to do, Melvyn? Because he'd published his 3rd novel in the last 5 years.
And no one's read it?
I don't know. I can't possibly say that.
See you next week.
Bye.